ישות הצפון בגליל העליון.
כמעט.
כמעט.
גליל תחתון.
גליל תחתון.
באמת? כן, אבל זה
אף מאזור ירושלים. רעננה.
רעננה בול כאילו?
קשה גם עם מסכות, זה יותר קשה. את מהדרום. לא. חיפה. טוב, אז אני לא יודע. גם הגליל העליון.
איפה אתה בגליל?
אני מיבניה, בגליל תחתון.
בגליל?
יבניה
מירושלים.
תחתון כאלה.
במקום.
עם הכתב שלו זה יותר.
גייז, אנחנו מתחילים. בסדר? מוכנים?
Alright.
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Hey. Welcome to Shalom Festival here in Mitzpe Ramon. My name is Gadi Stern. I'm going to be your host for this afternoon. I'm here with some lovely students from the Mitzpe Ramon Internal Campus Institute. And I'm going to be talking about some thoughts that I have about music. There are going to be some questions, and I'll do my best to answer. So, I'm not sure if to talk to you guys or to the camera, so I'm just going to rotate, okay? All right. I'll introduce myself to the camera because we already talked. My name is Gadi Stern. I'm a piano player. I play in a band called Shalom and a few other projects. I spent some years in New York, and I've been teaching music for about 14 years. Damn. Yeah. So today's masterclass theme is intuition and the intellectual mind. It's a big name, but it talks about one of the most elemental and primal ways of learning. So, like when the Hood asked me to do a masterclass, in a jazz school, I had a bunch of ideas about what we can talk about, like we can talk about harmony, melody, the way they relate, rhythm, polyrhythms, groove, time feel, swing, jazz history. Like there's a whole lot of stuff that you can discuss, in the master class. But one thing that is common for all of these things, and stop me if you don't understand something, I'm doing the English Hebrew thing, is that it's all information. L'akol meida. And when we're students, we deal with information all of the time. Like 251. What is a 251? It's like a concept, or it's like an actual thing. And we use very specific parts of our brain to understand these concepts. Now, if I ask you what this is, maze, kiseh, nachon? And what this is, shulchan. This is a cup of coffee. If you had to look at this and say, okay, it has 4 legs, you sit on it, it's made of wood, okay, it's a kiseh, it's a chair, It would be very hard to live life that way. Because some things you just know, right? You know that this is a chair. But if I ask you, okay, can you play me a 1-6-2-5 in A flat and 5-4? The place in your mind that you would go to would probably be not the intuitive part, but the intellectual part, lenateach, lachshov, which is what we get used to doing when we learn music. So I wanted to talk about the difference between using the intellectual mind, which is the part in our brain that we use to learn material. You probably remember from high school, when you learned for a test or something, it was very, dry, and probably you forgot the material right after the test. And that's because you use certain parts of your brain. But music is very similar to talking, for example. Right now I'm improvising the words that are coming out of my mouth. I didn't write this text. I speak and I think while I speak, but I mostly use my intuition. You don't go to a newborn baby, Tinok Kilu Ben Chodesh, and you tell him, okay, say my name is Ella and I'm 1 month old, right? You just expect the baby to miraculously learn how to speak, and that the baby uses his or her intuition. They hear people around them talk, people talk to them, and slowly they develop the skill to speak. It's a simplified version of it. The brain is much more complex than just that. But music is a language like Hebrew or English or Spanish, and I think I've been teaching quite a lot for the last few years, and I had many students come to me from music schools, especially in the subject of music theory, and I noticed that they only learned material using their intellectual mind. So they were able to analyze a piece, but they were not able to internalize it. You understand the difference? Internalize lehafnim. They were able to analyze lenateach, to say, okay, this is the 5, this is the 6, this is the 3. But what does those things mean? Like that's like you knowing that this is a chair. You don't analyze it, but you just know it. Another great example is walking. If I had to think about every movement that I do when I walk, it would be very complicated to walk, but I just do it, So, I can give you a personal example that I had a couple years ago. Someone told me, man, you should try to put, the metronome on the second 8th note and work with that. It will improve your time feel. So I did that, and I did it while playing Bach Inventions in all keys. And after 2 weeks, and I did it pretty much every day for 2 weeks, I felt that it did not improve one bit. Like I could do it technically, but I felt I'm not internalizing this second 8th note. Do you understand what it means, the second 8th note? Kilo shminita shniya. The metronome is on the second 8th note. It's very complicated. It sounds complicated, and it really is. Sorry? Exactly. You put the metronome on the offbeat, but only the second one. And the reason that it was so hard is because I was not working from the right place in my brain. I was working from an intellectual place, and I did not stimulate the intuitive place. So this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about actual ways to use means of practice to stimulate the intuitive part of our brain, legarot, and in that way to take knowledge, to take information, and really internalize it in the way that we can know what it is, but not necessarily understand. You probably had this experience, when you played, that you finished playing and it was probably like a good experience, and you were like, wow, I don't know what just happened, but it was great, right? You had this experience ever? You're like not sure. So I can tell about myself is that a lot of times after I play, I have no idea what just happened, but it was great. I know that it was good. And this is the best version of playing for me. And thinking usually comes in the way of that. Now it's the most, like we have whole philosophies, the Eastern philosophies and Western philosophies about not thinking, about experiencing without the thought, and music is a quite essential art which can benefit from these methods of work. Okay, lots of words, but let's talk a little bit about practical things. So I'm going to do a few examples myself, and then I'll ask you guys to join me, and we can talk about, how these methods relate to you and resonate. Okay. So the most basic form of intuitive work. רוצה לחזק לי את הסטנד? יש את זה. Okay, I got it. Okay. It's very frustrating to see it in other people's masterclass. I remember I saw a Herbie Hancock masterclass, and he's all just play, man. Just like you go and you just play, and he sounds great. So, yeah, it's oversimplifying it. But if we really try to analyze what goes on in this just play experience, so if I just put my hands on the piano and let things happen, and I'm going to try to translate my thoughts as I go. So this is something that I love doing, in the beginning of the day. If I'm not sure what to practice, if I'll just let my hands kind of look for ways. It doesn't always work because we're not always inspired. But lots of times you can, your hands will find something. So then my intellectual brain comes into the picture and says, okay, this is like a major chord in some nice inversion, And then the intellectual brain will also say, okay, let's try to do something a little more interesting. So let's just look at this small segment. The hands, which are intuitive, did this. The ears told the mind, okay, I like this. This creates emotion. This creates movement. And then the intellectual mind said, okay, let's try to take this a little bit further. So I'm not saying when you practice, use only the intuitive mind. I'm saying that when we work, we have to converse between the two parts of the brain. The intellectual part. It's the same with life, with civilization. We don't just flow around the world doing whatever. We use information, we use the intellect to analyze moments, to understand other people, to understand our actions. But then we do the actions with intuition. Do you understand this relationship that I'm talking about? Okay. So the intellect tells me, okay, you like this. Now how can I take this further? So one thing I can do is do it in another key. But notice my concentration and where my focus is. The negative way to work, or the one that I do not believe in, would be to do this. This is taking it through the keys. Now, when you take something through the keys, you basically tell your intuition, okay, I don't trust you. Let me take over. I'm just gonna go use muscle memory and do it over and over. Now, did you ever have the experience when you practiced something for a while, and then you came to the gig or the rehearsal or the session or whatever, and you couldn't do it? Did you ever have this experience? Never. אתה יכול בעברית, כן.
בעברית?
כן, כן.
אז כאילו מרגיש לי שיש פעמים יכול להיות שאולי לא הבנתי אותך נכון, אבל שזה כזה, לפעמים רק גם עם האינטואיטיביות וכמה שאתה רוצה לעשות את זה ככה, אז לפעמים כן יש בזה נכון ולא נכון כזה, ושכן צריך להיות.
לגמרי, absolutely. I'm talking about a different thing. I'm talking about practicing something. Let's say you practice Cherokee, okay? You know Cherokee, the song? I mean, you're a saxophone player, so that's what I was thinking. But okay, some up-tempo song, okay? You want to work on your up-tempo swing chops, and you play the song, and you do this exercise where you put it 5 BPM faster every time, with the metronome. And you reach 300 BPM, and you're like, yeah, I can play it in 300 BPM. It's really fast. Wow, And then you go in the session, and someone says, let's play this song fast. 1, 2, 1, 2, and and you can't deliver what you did in the practice room in the session situation. Now, this can happen, you know? I mean, there's lots of reasons that, you know, stress or confidence or whatever. But one reason that I always see with students and also in my experience is that if you practice from an intuitive place, if you practice while stimulating the intuition, like when we play, we use the intuition, right? We can't think about every note that we play. Stimulating is legarot. So we cannot think about every note that we play. Therefore, we play it intuitively. So if we block this part when we practice, we will probably not be able to access the things that we practice when we play. So this example, where I found this voicing intuitively, it's not something that I prepared, you know. Now, if I start taking it through the keys without giving it time and patience to every chord, I'm not going to stimulate the intuition. But if I do it just in one other key, now, as I play now, I have all different thoughts in my mind, like, oh, look at these double notes. You know what? I'm not super happy about how groovy my double notes are. You understand what double notes is? I mean, I intuitively did like this was just what came up. So I was like, okay, I'm not really happy about that. Let's slow it down. So this is again the intellectual mind saying, hold on, let's work on this. You know, but the material doesn't come from outside, it comes from inside. You know, the things that I practice. So I'm not sure what this is, you know, like da da do do da do da 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 do do da do. Okay, so so 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Am I in 3 or am I in 4? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So I'm emphasizing every 3, but I'm in 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So this is just thoughts. And instead of saying, I'm going to practice 4/3, or emphasizing every 3 bars, every 3 beats in a 4/4 time, or any of these very complicated themes, I'm not sure what I'm working on, but I know that I'm looking for something. And this is the long way to go. It's not always accessible because you need to be inspired when you work this way. You know, you're not always inspired. Sometimes you just want to practice and you're feeling uninspired, and there's ways to approach that as well. But what I'm showing to you is this way of going to your instrument, very vulnerable, very honest with yourself, you know, because I'm being very honest with myself now. I'm saying I'm not trying to sound good. I'm trying to look for things to work on. I'm not performing in front of myself or in front of anyone else. Thus, I'm putting the ego aside and leaving lots of space for the intuition to flourish. Did you understand? I'm going to say it in Hebrew. I'm not sure what the camera is, but I'm going to say it in Hebrew real quick. בזכות זה שאני כאילו בא בלי החלטה מראש על מה אני הולך לעבוד, אני מאפשר לעצמי לא להיות במוד של הופעה. אני לא מופיע לא מול עצמי ולא מול אחרים, וככה אני בעצם מחפש את המקומות שאני רוצה לעבוד עליהם בתוך עצמי. זאת אומרת שאני שם את האגו מאוד מאוד בצד, ואני שם את כל הרצון האינטלקטואלי שלי מאוד בצד, וככה אני נותן לאינטואיציה שלי לפרוח. You dig? All right. So I can give you lots of more examples, but I think it'll be nice to look at an example that you play. You know, like if you want to come to the piano or you want to come to the piano later, you can do drums. And we can actually look together about things that you work on and look for ways to stimulate the intuition in the material that you're working on. You wanna come down? All right. So we're inviting Maya, right? Maya to the piano. Maya is from Tel Aviv, so I heard. And she's a first year student, second year? Second year student here in Mitzpe Ramon. So,
What should I do?
let's talk about it. What are you working on recently?
I working on Ladies in Mercedes song. Like you mean a technique or some specific song?
I mean, if you go down to the practice room
Yeah.
and you say, okay, I want to practice,
Mm-hmm.
what would you practice? So there's a song that you're working on. What else?
I'm working a lot of about grooves.
Okay.
Polyrhythmics.
Okay.
And also like getting groovy patterns like into scale, like to if I'm
Super
going
cool.
up and down with scale, so like to doing with some rhythm.
Super cool. So she doesn't have a microphone, so I'm gonna let the audience at home know. She said she's working on some rhythmic grooves, some polyrhythms, and ways to put them into scales. So let's look at that. That's a great example. So show me a groove that you're working on or a polyrhythm that you're working on
Like with the scale.
with the scale. Sure.
Okay, so it's like instead of like going through
Great.
those.
So how do you work? You do it like in a few different keys, or
Yeah, I usually do it. It really depends. If I'm like in day, like okay, let's move it through scales. So yeah, I will do it. But I maybe could like hold long D, right? And then like to really feel this pattern, and then looking for more patterns.
Show
And
me.
I can like. So if like the first one was so the second one could be
Very good. So this is a great example of something that we do in the practice room, right? Because we do scales in the practice room. But then when we were on the gig or the session or the rehearsal, and we have a solo, we're probably not going to play. I mean, we could, but we like when you approach this scale world, scale is like past tense, present tense, and future tense in English. It's like תחביר בעברית. Like פיעל פועל והתפעל. בגד כפת בראש מילה. It's stuff that okay, it exists, but we don't think about it when we talk, right? We just talk.
Okay.
So when we play, we don't necessarily play a scale. The scale is in our hands,
Yes.
but we just play. So let's think about a way to stimulate the intuition, לגרות את האינטואיציה, with this same pattern. So first thing I want to do is slow it down, because I don't want to rush my intuition, because the intuition and the ear. This is something that I forgot to mention. In music, intuition equals ear. Okay, like the way that we use the ear is intuitive. The ear doesn't think, right? The ear hears. The ear experiences. האוזן. So when we want to make sure that our intuition is taken care of, we make sure that there's space and room for our ear. Now, our ears are much more sensitive than we care to think. Like I hear a lot, when I used to go to New School in New York, and I would hear people practice, and I would hear myself practice as well. And I think for many years, I was not giving my ear the care and the gentleness that it needed. You know, like lots of times we do ba ba da 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 da, another key da 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 da, and maybe the ear doesn't want to go that fast. Maybe the ear is not ready to hear that. You know, so one thing I want to do to make sure that my ear is part of what's happening is I sing. So let's do it just the scale, a little slower, and sing while you play.
Okay. Like the same things from.
The same thing, it's just the scale,
And
but
what
with the
was
rhythmic, yeah. Very good, very good. Now improvise using this pattern.
And sing.
Yes, thank you. Very good, very good. So here we're working on two things, right? We're working on a scale, right, and a sound, and we're working on a rhythmic pattern. So, you know, when you see a beautiful shell on the beach, the first thing that you would probably do, I mean, if you're a hippie, maybe you'd be like, oh, the shell is in its place, I'm not going to touch it. But if you're like most people, you'd probably go down to the sand and pick it up and look at it, right? So the first thing you do to learn it is that you look you look closer, which is to do it maybe slower, and you change the surface, right? When we see the shell with the surface of our hand, it looks totally different from the way that it looks on the sand. So let's choose the rhythmic pattern. Can you choose a tune that you know, like a jazz standard?
Okay. I can go through Ladies and Mercedes.
Ladies and Mercedes. Yeah, that could work. Maybe something a little more well known. Just I'm thinking, you know, people at home and I don't. You guys know the tune as well. Yeah, maybe something like, you know, like Autumn Leaves or All the Things You Are, or something like very common, if you know it.
I know it, but I don't remember the chords. I can put it.
No, okay. So let's do Ladies and Mercedes, or a blues. Do you know what? Do you know
Yeah.
So let's do it on the blues. That's the most common. Now play the form of blues, maybe a major blues, not a minor one, and use this rhythmic pattern in your improvisation. I'm gonna stop you real quick. Now this is
I didn't get the
sure,
rhythm.
and this is unfair. You have cameras all around you. There's lights. People are looking at you. You can't really be like, oh, I'm just gonna be with myself. It's hard.
Yeah.
But let's pretend that there's no cameras here and it's just the two of us. You know. The most important thing to let the intuition, and you don't even have to perform it here. You can do it, you know, at home. But the most important thing is the honesty that we have with ourselves to say, okay, I want to get this rhythmic pattern. I'm not performing right now. You're not performing, even though there's cameras. You are performing. I mean, there's mics here. But hypothetically, you're not performing. You are learning. You are working. You are practicing. And this is the sweet spot that I'm talking about. Being able to practice using the parts that we use to play, you know? So 1, 2, 3, 4, ba da da da. Is it so one thing I think that confuses is that the pattern doesn't swing. So let's do the pattern real quick and swing it. Try just to play the pattern. I recommend that you would not use the pedal. Yeah. another more small recommendation: use less of the left hand because the left hand is performing right now.
Yeah.
We're working. We're not performing. We just need the root, just one. Yeah, maybe the chord or the root, and observe the right hand. What can we do with this pattern? Bum ba dum ba ba ga bum ba dum bum ba 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 da ba 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 da ga bum da da 4. Okay, try. Okay, great. I'm gonna stop you. So, do you know there's a great Dr. Seuss book called I remember the name in Hebrew. "Mechapsim megalim mekomot niflaim." If you search, you discover great places. It's Shiyotzim. When you get out, you discover great places. So I'll change the title to "When you get in, you discover great places." When you work this way, you will find lines and ideas and concepts that no one could teach you because you are teaching yourself. You understand? You can take any concept and search on it this way. You know, like the only thing that you really need is brutal honesty. Am I working? Am I really looking for something, or am I performing? You know, and that's something I ask myself all the time. You know, am I in a performance mode? Because when you're in a performance mode, and we perform in front of ourselves all the time. You know, you're in the practice room. You're like, yeah, I'm playing the gig. Everyone loves me. You know, and you know it's great. You know, you can have a great time with this kind of mindset. But if you want to work on something, you need to kind of like left sheet all these layers to what's the word for left sheet in English? Strip. Yeah, strip all these layers out and get down to the source of what you're working on. Let's look at something a little more technical. For example, Bach. Do you play Bach? Like a Bach invention? Do you know one?
Yes.
Show me. Maybe an invention, you know, not a prelude. Do you know one?
Is that invention?
There's a prelude as well.
It's prelude as well.
Yeah, that's great. First one.
But I don't remember it. You remember it, maybe?
Let's switch pianists. So thank you, Maya. Applause. Everyone in the house. We have about 600 people here in Spelmon. COVID-19 sessions. Okay, what's your name? Sorry. Yasmin. So Yasmin, let's look at this Bach invention. It's F sharp, but it's cool. It's this is a good amount. So in jazz, it's very easy to notice, you know, like why this guy is connected to his ear or her ear, or this girl is connected to her ear, and this other musician, you know, is playing more technically, because jazz musicians improvise. So the whole self-connection thing is very apparent. ברור, רואים את זה. But you definitely have the same case in classical music, you know. She could practice this Bach invention for a little while and play it in perfect tempo with no mistakes. But still, when she plays it and when Glenn Gould plays it or when Arthur Rubinstein plays it, it's a whole different ballgame. It sounds different. Now, the reason is the same reason that when an improviser is connected with him or herself, uh, they reach a higher level, and that's the connection to the intuition. The connection to the intuition translates to awareness, to articulation, to awareness, to feel, to awareness, to touch. You know, those are all things that you cannot understand. You can only know. Do you understand the difference between understanding and knowing? Right? Like, you don't understand that this is a chair. You know that this is a chair. You don't understand that you need to play this loud and this soft. You just know it. You feel it. You know, feeling is the quite essential experience of intuition. We don't think our emotions. We just feel our emotions, right? We don't think, he spilled coffee on my pants, I should be angry. Hey, I'm angry at you. You know, it's an outburst, like music.
Feels like knowing at this stage, like the level after understanding.
Exactly. The level after understanding or above understanding. So, this is all fine and good, you know, it's all correct things. But how do we use this information, everything that I just said, in our practice? So the first thing that we did with the rhythmic pattern was we sang, right? So the first thing you want to do to get closer to the invention is to sing the line. Now, if you can use solfege if it's comfortable for you. I love solfege personally because, so if you go do re mi fa re mi do sol do si do re, while you play, you reach a little bit closer to the piece, you know, because there is something that comes from the inside. Lots of times in my experience, singers and trumpet players, because trumpet, you know, is controlled by breathing and not by fingers, are the most intuitive musicians that I've worked with. You know, there's something very intuitive about, like you probably know it from here, from the school, you know, that there's some great singers sometimes who don't necessarily understand harmony, right? Or don't know what they're doing. A good example in jazz is Chet Baker, who was also a good trumpet player. You know, he was a completely intuitive musician. Right. I mean, saxophone is a little different because there's a lot of finger work there. But yeah, woodwinds as well, for sure. Horns, yeah, the whole shebang. And I think that instrumentalists who play less intuitive instruments, like guitar is very much like that, saxophone in some ways, piano in some ways, we need to get closer to this place. So singing is absolutely fantastic for these instruments. So let's do it. You can do just the right hand, it's fine.
Only the right hand.
Yeah. Very good. Let's do it from the top, just the right hand. Very good. So I'm going to stop you here. We're gonna do just the first line. Do re mi fa re mi do sol do si do re. So your intuition can tell you something about the way that you hear the piece, because especially with Bach. This is the reason I asked about Bach, because you know lots of other composers like Chopin or Debussy or whatever, they tell you what the phrase should look like. But with Bach, there's much more room for the intuition because there's no specific instructions. So tell me, with your intuitions, how does the phrase, or what does the phrase sound like? Is it do re mi fa re mi do sol do si do re, or is it do re mi fa re mi do sol do si do? You know, like, where do you breathe? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm asking about your intuition.
Yeah, then between sol and do, I think.
Great. So play it.
Do, re, mi, fa, do, re, mi, fa, re, mi, do, sol.
Yeah, it was great.
Again? Okay.
Do it again. Yeah.
Do, re, mi, fa, re, mi, do, sol, do,
Fantastic. Okay. So I'm taking just this little moment as an example. Because, I mean, of course, we could work on a whole piece like that. But this was 5 or 10 minutes of her working on the first line in this invention. Now, as students, what we might do, which will kill the intuition, is to say, okay, I'm working on this Bach invention. I'm going to do it 15 times, over and over and over again. You know, like in a robotic way. You know, and I think especially as jazz musicians, we have the commitment to our ear and to ourselves to look. It's like you know, driving somewhere. You know, Joe and Jeremy drove from Haifa to Jerusalem. They had a date in a steakhouse, and Jeremy arrived 1 hour earlier, and then Joe arrived, and they they talked about their journey. And who was the first? Joe or Jeremy? Who did I say? Who was the first guy? Joe? Joe. Joe said, yeah, I drove in Kvish 6. I drove really fast, and I've been here with my phone for the last hour. And Jeremy's like, yeah, I saw this nice village. I stopped to have great milk, and then I saw this field of flowers, and I picked a few flowers. I brought them to my wife, and then I came here. So Jeremy had a much better trip, right? Like if you look at those 3 hours in total. And us as musicians, we have the commitment to be Jeremy in that story. We have the commitment to look for flowers when we practice, to look for those moments where we can really squeeze the juice out of the music, you know? So if we just do it over and over and over again, we're not going to find the magic. But if we're just going to take those little moments. Now, singing is great because singing tells you much more than you can, than repetition can tell you, you know? Chazaratiyut. You know, if you just did this line over and over again, you would probably not be able to hear the potential of the line. But if you sing it slowly one time, it's exactly like picking up that shell from the beach, you know? Because if you look at the shell and then you throw it down, you're not going to see anything. But if you stand and you really look at the shell, and then you see the sun reflects on the shell because it has some water drops on it, you know? And you move it a little bit, and then you see that it has brown and red and yellow, and you flip it, you can spend, you know, like it's like doing MDMA or something, you know, like, whoa, everything is amazing, you know? So this is the mindset that you want to be in when you work on music. Now, you can't always be in this mindset, of course, but you should always be on the lookout for this mindset. You dig?
Yeah.
Great. How are we with time? Around 10 minutes. Great. Okay. So I wanna talk to the drummer real quick.
So I go back?
Yes. Because we talked about notes and way to find notes, but we didn't really talk about how to work. Because this is what I want you to get out from this masterclass is not, okay, I play Bach and I sing, or I play a rhythmic pattern and I sing. It's not just about singing. It's about being able to reach a high level of awareness and looking for ways to work through intuition. Now, the voice is an instrument. It's not the purpose. So with drums, I mean, I'm not a drummer, but I did notice that drummers tend to work a lot on muscle memory, right? Repetition. Zikaron shel hashrir. Like you do this pattern over and over again until you have it. Saxophone players as well, you know, like a lot of times saxophone players will play a line over and over again until it gets into their fingers, right? So one small thing that we can do is, Mitzpah is small, right? It's a small city, small-ish. But there's probably one way that you take coming from home to here every time, right? It's like the same route, right? 2 ways. Try to see, like, next time you go home or you come here, if you can take a turn that you're not sure about. Like, I never noticed this turn. Like, maybe I'll take this turn and try to find my way to to the jazz club, you know? This is what we do when we practice. So if you practice some rhythmic pattern, you want to show me like, or you want to do it balpe? You don't need cymbals. You can just do the actual drums. You can just sticks is fine. Nice shoes. Show me a pattern or a groove. Try. This is the first change that, because what I'm trying to show is how small changes in what we do can create new opportunities for growth. Well, do you understand? Or you want to do it in Hebrew? Say it in Hebrew. כאילו שינויים בהרגלים, לעשות את אותה פעולה אבל באופן קצת שונה, יכול לעורר גדילה ולעזור למצוא מקומות חדשים. So playing something without the cymbals is the first step. We're going to find the second step in a minute. So play something, like a groove or a rhythm. Very good. Now, play it again and count out loud. Very good. If you can count super loud, it'll be great. Like, yell the numbers. Very good. Okay, so you see his face. I mean, I don't know if the camera catches his face, but his face right now was face of growth. His face was face of concentration and internalization of something new, you know. And it's the smallest thing that we did. We just count and play. It's the most obvious thing, but it's these most small and obvious things. Now, if we had time, I could do 100 different of exercise. Like, I can give you the newspaper of today and ask you to read the newspaper while you play. I can ask you to switch the hands. I can ask you to count a clave, ta, 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 ta. I can ask you to do what you do with the bass drum on the snare and do what you do with the snare on the bass drum. So these little creative gifts that we give ourselves, what they do is they activate new parts of the brain. If you just do something in repetition, you only activate the intellectual part, saying, okay, I'm reading this pattern. Da, ta, da, ta, da, ta, da, ta, da, ta, da. I'm going to do it faster with the metronome. Da, ta, da, ta, da, da. Okay, I practiced for 1 hour. Good for me. This is not enough, because this is not music making kind of mentality. If you say, okay, I'm going to switch this little thing, I'm going to be creative with this little other thing, I'm going to use my mouth, I'm gonna dance while I do it, then it's like you enlighten different areas in your mind, and when you play, these areas are all going to come handy and all going to join you. You know what I mean? All right. I think I said my piece. So I hope you guys at home are good. I'm not sure if it's like people are asking stuff on the Facebook or so-and-so. I hope you have a good day. I hope this virus thing ends quickly for you, or that you're happy with it, and then, hope you enjoy yourselves. If you have questions about anything that I said, comments, or, things that you disagree with, feel free to write me on Facebook. I might even answer. Have a good day. Have a great day. It was great hanging out with you guys. Peace and love. Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Gadi Stern for the great workshop. This is a part of a week of events, Internal Compass Shalom 2020 Festival, saying goodbye to the best year ever. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, consider donating to Internal Compass in the link in the description. Thank you very much, Gadi. Thank you. Thank you very much, our dear students, for participating. Thank you, Yoel, for the video and the editing. And see you soon.
תבוא, יש שתי הופעות היום. שתי הופעות מלאות.